Hey, CP, what up, boy? Good to see you, man.
I ain't seen you since spot in Miami. It's been a while.
Appreciate it, bro.
Spot in Miami called.
Feel like I know y'all. I don't know y'all, but I feel like I know y'all.
How you doing?
How you doing? Nice to meet you.
I'm Ryan.
What's up, boss man? All right. It's a pleasure to meet you.
How you doing?
Hi, how are you?
Hey,
It's a
TP.
pleasure to
Teaching
meet
them
you,
right.
too.
You can beat this dude. Can you out hoop that dude? What's up, man? How you doing?
I'm alright, thank God.
Man, good. I be with your family all the time.
I know. We've been saying you spend more time with my family, and I spend more time with little Chris.
Exactly, Chris. Look. Troy, call him up, man. Look.
Troy, I ain't gonna cuss because these kids are around, but what's up, man? You good, big dog?
Yo.
Jalen, man, everything straight? We just like,
All right, I'm gonna call you when we're done.
My son said, little Chris said, his house is so big, but it's in the middle of nowhere.
It is, bro.
Chris, where you went? Oh, when you was with Kingston, and y'all went down there. Y'all went out there, because I got my kids' location, right?
Right.
And so they was with Marvell there. I was like, okay, we thought they was at their house. Then I looked at his location, and he was in San Diego. I was like, oh, where he at? Where you done took my kids? How many kids you got?
3.
3?
Yeah, 11, 10, and 2.
Ooh, well, you started over.
I reached COVID, bro.
That's tough.
That too.
Bro,
COVID. He said COVID. He was at home.
That reset of motherfucker.
Went to
Y'all
work
got
from
kids? How
home.
many kids y'all
See, I got 5 boys and a daughter. Yeah. So my oldest
I'm
son.
done though. My last one just graduated high school.
Oh, yeah, you done.
Yeah, I'm 24, 22, 18.
My youngest is 11.
You don't even look like you old enough to have kids.
Them boys were real loose back in high school.
Hey,
That's what it was. High school.
I was so
boy.
terrified to hear somebody.
High school
It's
caught me.
crazy, man. I tell y'all. I mean, football different, but like with us, like I'm in the locker room with guys that's closer in age to my kids than they are to me now.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like, who was it? Y'all, obviously, y'all know JJ Redick.
Yeah.
JJ was my teammate, and when we first met, he didn't have any kids, right? Me and my wife was sitting with him and his wife, and they was like, you know, it's a lot of people to be like, we're just gonna enjoy each other and have kids later. And then he started seeing me every day at practice with little Chris. The next thing you know, he came to practice one day, and he was like, Chelsea's pregnant. And I never thought about it. You just like, what's dope about having kids like that though is your kids got a chance to see you play.
Yep.
Right, yeah.
Right? And so I say that, I be talking to Devin like and all that because he ain't got no kid or whatnot, but I'm so happy that they got to see me play and they ain't had to go to YouTube.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, but you picked the right person to make babies with.
Oh no, that's a big thing.
Don't just encourage people.
Yeah, I tell guys all the time, be careful who you procreate with now.
So it
You know what I mean?
also, pays to have a strong 18-year career and still going.
we won the Super Bowl. Jordan was 8. He broke us down at every walkthrough on Saturday.
See?
That's cool.
Because I would take him to walkthrough all the time. And so then the next year, he was the babysitter. He'd make like $100 every Saturday morning because everybody started bringing their boys and he'd watch them.
See, ain't nothing like it. And I always say this because, like I said, playing as long as I didn't play, Monty Williams coached me back in New Orleans my last year, and then he was my coach till they just let him go. But when I first got there, I used to always be like, Coach, where Elijah at? His kids. And Coach used to be like, man, I try to like not bring them around. I was like, oh, Coach, no. We all together too much not to. Mm-hmm. And I be on my kids' head all the time. I'm the hardest person on them because their advantage is not their last name.
Correct.
You know what I'm saying? That's not their advantage. That's actually the disadvantage. The advantage is seeing the work.
Access.
Right? So you gotta bring them to practice sometimes. You gotta let them see what you're doing. Because if you think they just gonna make it off your last name, that's what's not gonna happen. So Coach son, real nice too.
Really?
He one of the top 5 players in the country now.
Dang. How old is he? How old is his son?
9th grade.
Ninth grade. The other thing too, to have kids that end up doing what you do. I think in basketball, it's really prominent. Like all the dudes that I watch play, it seems like all of their kids hoop. But in football, not everybody, because not everybody wants to do it.
Well, not everybody wants to do it. And then, I'm gonna be honest, I played football.
Mm-hmm.
Like I played varsity football as a freshman and sophomore, and I was on the JV basketball team.
Really?
Like I'm the way I am because I played football, right? Yeah. Like straight up, I'm the way I am because I played football. I won't let him.
Yeah.
I won't let him. And think about it, like this sounds crazy, and I don't know y'all take on football and all that. I know y'all made a career, but it's so many more guys who played football who won't let their kids play.
Yeah.
That ain't the case for basketball.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
It's different.
But
That's
I
true.
say this is what changed my mind because I got an 11-year-old. He's about to go in. His first year tackle's coming up, right?
Yep.
And you know Pat Surtain, he
Yeah.
played in the league. He's a Pro Bowler from back in the day, and now his son was a first-round draft pick. So I started talking to Pat, and I was like, Pat, man, you know all the head injury, all that stuff.
Right.
What was your decision to let Lil Pat play? He said, man, if God gave him the gift to play at a high level at this, I'm the one stopping him. And that's what made me change my mind.
And I respect the hell out, because it's so crazy I say that. I started playing tackle when I was like 5 or 6, right? Like I loved football. I went to the national championship for football, like Pop Warner, like everything was football, you know what I'm saying? But then he played flag, he was nice, he was out there, and when he wanted to play tackle, I didn't let him.
Right.
And I almost be mad at myself sometimes, because if you look at a lot of the best basketball players, it's because we played football.
That's true.
Like I like the contact and hoop because of football.
It's also a certain level of athleticism that goes into it that I think you learn to play through physicality while being athletic. Where in basketball, you know, I tweeted it during the game. I was like, man, it would be hard for me, one, I ain't got the skill to play basketball at y'all level, but it will be hard for me to have to fake soft. You know what I'm saying? For me to know a man is pushing me and to not lean into the push, or to not push him back, or to not be physical, to have to let him push me and almost feel like, oh, I let you win.
Yeah.
Like that part doesn't compute
You
for
talking
me.
about when Brian flying to the 4th row? When somebody touch him? Know what
Hey,
we
but
talking
he's
about?
6'8", 260.
Yeah. Brian, nobody ain't pushing Brian into the 4th row.
It's crazy because, like, sometimes somebody do something to you, you embellish it a little bit or whatnot because you're trying to get a foul, you're trying to get possession. Like, that can go either way. But what you're saying is so real. Like, it's crazy because I talk about my kids, but they right here, but they know I'd say it to them too. I get so frustrated with my son because he only wants to play basketball, right? Like, he know it. Like, I be on his head. I be like, play something else. And I think about it, like, when you play football, y'all play Pop Warner too?
Yep.
Yeah.
Like, all the stuff you had to do, like, you didn't even think about. When you had to do 6 inches, right?
Let's go.
You was getting your abs stronger. You didn't even
Fun.
know.
Yeah.
Like, all this different type stuff, because I'm always with him now, trying to make him do push-ups to get him stronger. Playing football, you wasn't lifting weights, but you sort of was. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Yes.
All the stuff, them up downs,
All
Yeah.
of that stuff
Bull in the
that
ring.
that you did for punishment, that indirect stuff, that made you better. It
Right.
made you stronger physically. And I always go back to, in terms of the kids in sports and if they want to play this sport or that sport or football, exposing them, allowing them to go. And if they fall in love with it, so be it. It's a million ways to die.
Yeah. It's also a million ways to podcast, but it's only one way to pivot.
Yes, sir.
So we gonna start.
Hold up, limitless. Niggas to me, got pinning it. I fought the here to witness it. Get my people feeling militant. Way I'm feeling, get me up. On the mission, get me up. Knowing me, I got the key. Only vision I can trust. Limitless. Niggas to me, got pinning it. I fought the here to witness it. Get my people feeling militant. Way I'm feeling, get me up. On the mission, get me up. Knowing me, I got the key.
Man, welcome to The Pivot. This is Chan. I'm RC. This is Freddie T. To our partners, Happy Dad. We appreciate you guys, DraftKings. I mean, I think, we've had enough conversation. Bro, your career speaks for itself. Finished 18 years, 12-time All-Star, 2013 All-Star MVP, 11 All-NBA teams, 9 times All-Defensive Team, Rookie of the Year for at the time, New Orleans Hornets, 2-time gold medalist, NBA PA president from 2013 to 2021, largely responsible for the bubble. Was said that you actually kept basketball going in 2020 after Jacob Blake was shot. And so I just think there's so much that goes into you that we want to get into. But with all of those accolades, you'll also add author on June 20th with 61 life lessons from Papa on and off the court. You had a joke, or you said that the Cedric the Entertainer skit with the cigarette in the mouth, dude fixing your carburetor, but talking to you, never dropping the cigarette, and just somebody who embraced the entire community. You said he was not only blue collar but blue pants, had the red rag, red name stitched on his shirt. You committed to Wake Forest. There was one hat. He was wearing it. And shortly after that, you're at a football game and you get a phone call. Take us through that night and the events that transpired after you got that phone call.
Man, first of all, thank y'all for having me. It's an honor and a privilege, man. I watch you guys and see you guys and all the conversations you have, and I tell you, sometimes I see it and I'll be like, damn, I want to tell him this, I want to tell him that, you know what I mean? But I appreciate it. But what you were saying was that day was a day I never forget. You know what I mean? It's been 20 years now since that happened, and I was at our high school football game, got a phone call from my brother. My older brother, CJ, had drove down for my signing and he had went back to school. And he said, I'm coming home. And I was like, what you mean you coming home? You was just here. And he was like, Papa's sick. And like, what makes it so crazy is I was just with my granddad the day before, on probably one of the biggest days of my life. And as I'm going to the car, I see one of my cousins and he grabbed me and he told me they killed him, right? And so at 17, and I know there's a lot of people in this world who done had way crazier tragedies than I have, but that was tough. That was tough, you know, when people that's close to you pass away or die from sickness or things like that, that's a lot easier to deal with. But knowing who my grandfather was and what he meant to my family, it was a lot for me to have to deal with.
Somebody had to take over as a patriarch. And you say you were 17. Was that stress for you? Did you take over? Was it a community thing? How did you replace?
You know, what's funny is like I am blessed and fortunate to have mom and dad, right? Because I always talk about this when guys win or they become successful or something, they always say, thanks, mom. And my mom dope, don't get it twisted, but my pops is like a real dad. You know what I'm saying? And he always been that for my family. My grandmother died when I was 8 from lung cancer. I'm from Winston-Salem, Tobacco Road, so everybody smokes cigarettes, right? Everybody. Like my class field trips as a kid was to the tobacco plant. Right, so everybody had COPD or whatnot, and my grandmother died of lung cancer when I was 8, my grandfather's wife. And at her funeral, he like put his arm around me, and I remember, I'm very visual. I remember how my mom and my aunt looked at the funeral, and it was tough. When she died, me and my grandfather got even closer, right? And y'all know what it's like with your parents. My parents was hard on me, so anytime I got a butt whooping, call Papa. Papa, they tripping. Papa, come get me. So after church, I would ride with my granddad. And my granddad was the first person I knew with money. Like with real,
Huh?
yeah, but like real money. You know what I'm saying? Like my granddaddy used to have a fat wad of money in his pocket, right? So I just saw the way he moved, and it's crazy like being older now. That was 20 years ago. I was just on the phone talking to somebody about how my granddad never went on vacations and stuff because he just worked. And I think sometimes we find ourselves doing that too because we got to provide. And so when that happened with my granddad, I did take on a bit of responsibility, and I knew what I wanted to do for me and my family.
So the title of the book, 61, represents your grandfather's age at his passing. And the day after, you had a basketball game in which you scored 61 points. So my question to you is this, Chris. How in the hell I'm sure the anger and the frustration was there, but to be able to go out there and score 61 at your will and then purposely airball a shot so you wouldn't score no more and it would finish on that number, like how in the hell were you that fucking good and that upset at the same time?
Tell you the truth, I still don't know. Like my dad still has the tape. Like my dad is the hoarder, he has everything, so he has the tape. So I've watched bits and pieces of it, especially with my kids so that they can see it. But it was seriously like an out-of-body experience. We was actually playing against my mom's old high school, and all my family was there. And when I got 59, and when I did the in and out and hit the floater and got 61, it was like pretty emotional, right? And my dad was assistant coach for my high school at the time, so I went to the free throw line, and when I threw the ball out of bounds, I just looked at my dad and fell into his arms crying, because my granddad was so much, like not just for my family, but for the community. Like everybody knew me as Mr. Jones' grandson, right? My granddad was, it's crazy because even writing this book, the whole process of it was like therapy for me. Like sometimes I hadn't talked about this stuff in 20 years and I try not to get emotional about it, but my kids, we found a video recently of my granddad's 60th birthday party, right? And like I said, back in the day, everybody had tapes of everything. And it was a tape set up like this at the cookout, right? You couldn't do that today because you don't know what somebody's gonna say. You know what I mean? And I was looking at the tape of it and I took a video of it and I put it in my family group chat. And my mom called me crying. My kids, my wife, they had never heard my grandfather's voice. You know, you take some of that stuff for granted, man. And it's just been cool, the whole process of it, learning more about my family and give my kids an opportunity to know who their great-grandfather was.
And I know that was in high school, but dudes do it to this day when dudes go out there and drop 61. I'm a Heat fan. I watched Jimmy drop 56 early in the playoff. Do you tell your teammates, hey, y'all running wind sprints today? Do they know that they ain't gonna touch the damn ball on offense? Because I ain't gonna play with your ass too much longer.
That's a real good question, because what's crazy is nobody knew. My teammates didn't know. My teammates didn't know. And the other thing is if you watch the game, it wasn't like I shot it literally every time down. I think I still had 10 assists in the game. All I did before the game was, in high school, we used to shoot free throws or whatever before we got on the bus and went to the game. All I told my coach was, because we was nice, my high school, we was nice. And so I told my coach, I said, Coach, if we get a big lead tonight, just let me play. Just let me play. Like, you know, when you get up 20 and 30, they sit you. I said, Coach, tonight, just let me play. The only person that I think knew was my backcourt mate, dude named David Gillette.
You're known as a facilitator. You're in 11,000 assist club, 6-time assist leader?
Something like
Something
that.
crazy. You don't even, man, I don't know. You got too many assists to even
know.
Played
a long time.
But to make that decision, because everybody loves glory. Everybody loves glory. You're capable of scoring 30 a game, but you decide to be a facilitator. You're better at assisting because you got the rock. And now you say, I'm gonna pass it up. To this day, I watch you now, bro. To this day, you'll pass up shots to give somebody else.
You know what? Some of my coaches, that's what they on me the most. And it's so crazy, man, because I had seasons where I averaged 23, 21 or something like that. And I don't know, I think that's probably one of my biggest faults is not being more aggressive, you know, and I battle with that because I guess since I was young, I always knew I could get any shot I wanted to, right? But knowing that it's a team sport, I'm always like, let me get this guy a shot. Let me get this guy a shot. That's sort of been the downfall of me too. So I'm 18 years in, I'm still trying to get better. You know what I mean? And finding that balance.
You know,
just don't throw the ball away.
He don't turn it on. He just come down. Other people.
Yeah.
That's all. He just
Come down and kick the ball.
I know, right? I know.
I usually pick basketball players I'm a fan of by the way they play basketball.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm not talking about the skill. Like you guys have, the fact that you can go score 61 means that you have a level of skill that most humans don't have with the basketball. People call you the point guard, all these different things. But I like you is because I think you'll fight. I'm just being honest. Like basketball players who I think will fight become my favorite basketball players. You just happen to be really good at it.
Got a few fights.
But I know you would. I've seen it. But outside of that, you mentioned your father, Charles,
Yeah.
being a real dad. Obviously, Mr. Nathaniel Jones, your grandfather, was a real father. And the scoring made me think about it. You scored 41 in Game 6 of the Western Conference Finals. And before you cuss and leave, you know, you say, I wish my son and my family was here. And there was a story written about you afterwards about how you're not only debunking Father Time, but you're debunking the black myths and narratives of fatherhood. How important was your upbringing, having two men like that in your life to teach you how to be a father to your children and a husband to Jada?
Man, I'm gonna tell you this, man. I'm glad I'm here to speak on this. Sometimes I just feel like I'm always doing the work, right? And sometimes people who talk do this and do that, but I just feel like I always just try to put my head down and do the work. And I'll never forget this. I need to go back and see who it was, but some of the talking heads some years ago, you know, certain things you may not speak on, but you pay attention. We was playing against the Lakers, and this was when I was with the Clippers, and it was our away game, And we was up by like 20 or 30 or something like that. And the people who sit in the courtside seats had left already. So my son was sitting like 2 or 3 rows behind, and I asked my wife to let him come sit over there, right? Game wasn't over or whatnot, but my son came and sat down there close. And I remember it was on one of them shows the next day, and they was like, how disrespectful is this? The game is still going on. Chris Paul got his son sitting over there. And I remember being so hot in a world where they always talk about us not being dads and not being fathers and not being present and all this. My son had just left a doctor and found out that he was gonna have to have this surgery, and we was leaving to go on the road the next day. So yeah, I'm at work, but I seen an opportunity to be dad for a second, right? So I brought him down there, and I remember just watching them talking heads like, y'all done lost y'all mind, you know? And that's why I think I'm so excited now that I see Deuce, right? Jason Tatum's son, out on the court before the game, you know what I mean? Being, like JT is a dad, you know what I'm saying? He gonna go out there and do his job and work and all that stuff, but he a dad. I was probably one of the first ones, I don't know, like that, used to bring him to the press conferences with me, right? I used to take Chris to the press conferences with me after games, and he'd say wild stuff or whatnot, but for them 40 minutes, 48 minutes while I'm out there on the court playing, I'm locked in. But when the game over and we break it down, I'm dad. Y'all know what it's like being a professional athlete, early mornings, working out, training or whatnot. And so I've always tried to be that because I had a dad who like worked. My pops, man, he found a way. He made a way. He coached all my teams, right? He coached all my teams. And I don't get to do that, right? And so I've always just tried to be as present as I can be in a world that is extremely abnormal.
I got to get a happy dad on that one. got to get a happy dad on that one, man, because that's all.
Mine.
Yeah, I got y'all. You got it.
You know,
man,
that's why I left with you. Ain't never throw it to you.
Nah, I caught some passes, bro. I caught a ton of passes, bro. What you mean?
How many?
What you mean?
It's just what you mean.
I caught,
You don't know the answer.
I probably averaged 30, 40 catches a season.
Oh, that's a lot.
I mean, it was decent. That was back then, but I was toting rock. In the new NFL, they catching, I don't know, Christian McCaffrey, 100 catches, other backs,
Le'Veon
60, 70.
big
It's funny to hear y'all say new NFL, because
It's changed a lot. It's changed.
yeah, I played in the old NBA and the new NBA.
Correct.
Yeah,
You know,
two different games.
But that's the testament to your longevity and your athleticism and your talent, you know. But this going back to being present, you know, speaking and staying there real quick. You have a ton of initiatives with HBCUs. You have a few docuseries that you did with ESPN that you produced at FAM, Southern, and I believe North Carolina Central.
Yep.
Right? Why is the support so strong for those schools?
Man, I tell you the support is because when you're younger, like I didn't really get into history and all that stuff till I got older, right? I was like a math kid when I was like in school. I hated history. I didn't want to know nothing about nothing. And as I started getting older, I started to ask a lot more questions. I just always been curious, right? So when you're a kid and you growing up, you just know where you at. You know what I'm saying? You just know what's around where you at. So I grew up in Winston-Salem. Wake Forest was down the street, Winston-Salem State, both in Winston-Salem. I don't know nothing about the school. I don't know that this is a PWI. I don't know this is a HBCU.
Right.
I don't never go to Wake Forest. I don't ever, like, they got like trees around the campus, so you can't see there. But I would go to Winston-Salem State all the time because we would go to the football games on Saturday. My cousins, all my family went there. And so that's just my normal. Wasn't until I got to the NBA and got a little older and I started saying like, oh, okay. So this school like this, because they get a bunch of money, they get the proper funding. Oh, okay, it's only 105 HBCUs. Okay, you got HBCUs right here because our people couldn't go to these different schools once upon a time and get the education, right? So it's always been, like, it's genuine, right? And I always say this, I went to Wake Forest University and I'm so grateful for that opportunity and what I was able to do from Wake Forest, but that doesn't mean that I still can't support Winston-Salem State.
Yep.
A&T and all that. Because I asked y'all went to the U, right? I know you was at LSU.
They went to Florida.
Florida.
University of Florida.
Yeah, I went to LSU.
Florida. Oh yeah, University of Florida.
Yep.
But y'all was down there in Florida. You was at LSU.
Right down the street from Southern.
From Southern. Did y'all ever go over to FAM?
We would take trips up to Tallahassee and slide to FAM.
Right.
But we had a nice 2-hour drive to
My wife,
just to hang out on the
gonna
set
watch,
and
but
this and that. You know what I'm saying?
Right. So that culture and all that stuff, man, is real.
Yeah.
It's real. And so for me, it was about just showing people that they got that support. You know what I mean? They got that support. And then the other thing was about not just wearing the shirts and the hoodies and all that, is really putting dollars and cents behind it and trying to figure out how I could just help any way possible.
Yeah, I want you to talk about a few of your initiatives so you can share with the people that'll watch it. But did that love for HBCUs, did that influence the decision to graduate from Winston-Salem University and not Wake Forest?
Oh, yeah.
Congratulations.
Oh, appreciate it. When I went to Wake Forest, I didn't know I was going to the NBA, right? I wasn't like the kid who just went to school for a minute and already knew that he was getting drafted. So I went to Wake to get a good education so that I would go out into the workforce with a degree. And so actually right when little Chris was born, I was taking classes. He was born in 2009. I've been in the league for 4 years. And I was going to class at Wake Forest. Then at one point I remember I made a USA team and I was taking classes and I had to go to USA and one of the teachers failed me. I was like, man, can I make that up? Can I make that up? So then, just like anybody, I took a nice hiatus. And then I remember right before the pandemic and during the pandemic, I was like, I'm gonna take some classes. I wanna graduate from Winston-Salem State. I went to Wake Forest, did those couple years. I love to marriage that whole thing together, man. And it was a process. It was one of the dopest things ever. Like some of my classes, I'll just tell you this, like some of them was online and your teachers would Canvas. I had to get on Canvas to see all my schedule and my classes, my classmates. I had some of my classmates email me and be like, is this really Chris? Is this really you? Because some of the assignments would be the first thing you got to do is you got to email 2 or 3 of your classmates and tell them who you are and what you do. Right. Man, I think, I left my wallet in the car, but I got my student ID. I keep it with me, man, because that was a memorable day.
But why the hell did you want a degree? You say your 4th year you went back? I don't want a pocket watch, but you already had bread, and then through years you made a lot of bread. Why did you need a degree? Because they asked me, I left as a sophomore, red shirt.
Yeah.
They told me, hey, why don't you go back and get a degree? And I looked at them and was like, why? I make more money than a doctor right now.
Because you know what? For me, it's about completion. You know what I mean? For real, it's about completion. I ain't never been a quitter, never will be, but it's something I told my mom, right, before I left school, like when I went, that I was gonna do it. I'll never forget my brother when he graduated. I was just so proud. Everybody in my family didn't get that opportunity. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so when you doing like sets in the weight room, right, and the trainer tell you got 10, right, and you get to 8 and he walk away and look away, do you not do the last 2?
Got to.
You got to.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's just something about completion. Like I wanted to finish and
I love that word, completion, because it's about finishing, right? It's about starting something and finding a way to the end. You are solidified as a great. You're going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. After you went to the finals, you said that you were addicted to that feeling.
Right.
And not even in a joking way, these two never been in a championship, so I'm gonna talk to you. All right?
They be saying I'm real sober now, and they be saying.
No, these two have never been in a professional championship.
Yeah.
So every now and then when I start talking about championship games, I like to talk to people who've been in the same sort of arenas that I have in those big moments. But for you, you have all the individual accolades you could ever want. You continue to play, you play the game hard, and you know, like I said earlier, just the way you compete is what I love to see out of great basketball players. How difficult has it been to be so close? I think Game 5 in Houston, you guys have the Warriors on the ropes, you get hurt. This year, now you have KD and you have Book. You know, you were a huge part of that because now you could take the ball handling, they get to spot up and shoot and play those games, and then you injure your groin. How difficult has it been to deal with so many almost for you?
Man, it's tough on me, but I think it's probably even harder for the people around me. right? Especially my wife. My wife is the one who has to bear those late nights, those I can't sleep, and my kids. Like, my daughter is the sweetest soul you'll ever meet in your life, right? The sweetest soul ever in your life, but she's at that age now where at school, kids talk crazy to her, right? So she had a little boy, whatever, at school that said some reckless stuff to her. It was like, your daddy ain't never gonna win no championship, right? And my baby is she's special. She'll hold it together there, but when she got in the car, she called, and she was upset. And I had to have that conversation with her and talk to her, and tell her, like, baby, some people talk and some people do. But that's part of it. It's tough, man, but can't nobody ever be harder on me than I am on myself, right? And I feel like I've been in every situation there is possible. I was in the playoffs when I played for the Clippers, and game 3 or 4 in Portland, one of them, I go for a steal. My finger gets caught in the guy's jersey, spiral fracture in my hand. I had to get 16 screws put in my hand, right? So I've had injuries and things like that. But the one thing about it, as mad as I am and whatnot, I cannot let that define me, right? I gotta get back to work. And I think that's what's happened over my career is when those things happen, I take that night to let it process, and then that next morning, I gotta get back to work. If that's rehab, if that's whatever it is, and then I work as hard as I can to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Do you see how they treat Barkley and think about that? How the man's amazing, all the numbers, Hall of Famer, but every time they talk about Barkley, he ain't got a damn ring.
I see it. The good thing for me is I'm still playing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm still playing. And to each his own or whatnot, I'd be lying if I said I didn't want to win a championship, but it ain't like I go out there like I'm not trying to win a championship, you know what I'm saying? But I also know how blessed and fortunate I am that I get a chance to play. Nothing against guys who done won, but I guarantee you I could run off some guys that didn't want it, that's sitting at home chilling, that wish they could still play.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that championship you got is not gonna put you back in somebody's locker room.
That's real.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's gratitude there for still having the ability to play. I didn't realize y'all didn't win a championship. Have you ever thought about, like, if you did win it, like what is it gonna feel like?
Oh yeah, shoot, I was laying in the confetti, Chris.
No, I'm just saying, like for y'all, for real.
I never played, obviously, in the big game, but we were this close in Jacksonville in '99, which was forever ago. And, you have those moments like, dang, what would it have been like? And then you tell yourself, it's okay, we'll get back. Then you don't see the playoffs again for 5 or 6 years. But those moments, and for me still to this day, leading up to the Super Bowl is tough for me. Like, I still get pissed, upset, frustrated. And I've been retired now for 13 years, but I can watch the game, but just the moment leading up to it, and then post-game celebration, I turn the TV off.
Yeah, that's real. You say that. Go ahead.
Oh, me?
I know where this is
You
going.
don't care?
I thought about if I win a Super Bowl, this Rolodex of women about to go through the roof.
It's a wrap.
I found out through time that my approach to sports was way different than everybody else.
Yeah.
I was chasing money and partying.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That's why I probably ain't players. They double-digit years. I played for 6 because I was beating my body to death the whole time I was playing. I was out every night.
Even 9 game days.
Hey, earmuffs. He talking about beating his body to death.
I already know what he was beat now.
Yeah, he talking about just running through Miami.
Oh, I already know.
Chris, just going back to it, had some close moments, and unfortunately the injuries happened. And there was another almost, that 2011 trade that didn't go through to the Lakers. How often do you think about that? Because I went back and looked at the roster. Bean was Kobe was still putting up 27. Paul was there, Odom. They was
gonna be in the
They were
trade.
all going to be involved.
they were going to be in the
though.
trade.
Yeah.
Okay, but still, Kobe was there. I don't give a fuck about nobody. Bean
straight
was
up.
still there.
That whole story gonna be for a whole nother time, but it's crazy because it was wild, man. It was wild. Shout out to my boy Trevor Ariza, who was with me. It's crazy how all that stuff went down, man, and how the GM called and me and Kobe got on the phone. We talked, and a phone call came through to let us know that the trade was nixed. I went to go eat at a restaurant called Z's. That's where I was. Me, my wife, little Chris was a baby, and Trevor. And the people in the restaurant started talking crazy, like, F you, man, get out of here, get out of here, get out of here. So then we left and went back to the condo, and we thought the trade was happening. It didn't. Like I said, me and Kobe got on the phone, and Kobe is just special, and it's different. I think I was so excited about it. I seen a podcast from him from a while ago talking about us, like with the All-Star game, right? Like me and Kobe was just wired the same. You know what I mean? His talent was outrageous, but when we played against each other, we was about to fight just about every time, because we was both on the same energy. And I don't know how to not play for real, right? So if it's a preseason game, let's get to it, right? If it's a regular season game, let's get to it. If it's an all-star game, let's get to it. So Cole, any all-star game that me and him played together, I don't think we ever lost.
Wow.
Right? Wow. And that was just because our approach to it was, you get paid for playing in an all-star game, right? The winning team get a certain amount, the losing team get a certain amount. But even if it was just for the winning team get a dime and the losing team get a nickel, we gonna play it the same way. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So I hate that opportunity didn't get to happen, because, especially at that point in my career, I always knew how good Kobe was, even at catch and shoot. But he's never got a chance to show that part of his game. Right. But had we got a chance to play together, I think it could have been fun.
The part of that story that's crazy is you actually had to go back to practice afterwards. And just to, honestly, bro, I'm from the NO. Just to be in the NO and people think you want to be gone, I already know how.
So let me tell you this though, Ryan, and I never spoke on this, and I tell you this, what a lot of people don't know, a lot of time done passed now, but they was coming to practice, right? Because there'd be a lot of people in New Orleans say, you left us, whatever. If I keep it 100 right now, I tell you, they was coming to practice and telling us that the team was leaving. Mm-hmm. They was telling us that the team was moving to Kansas City. They told us that the team was moving to, what was it, San Diego, somewhere in California. Like, me and David West had been there. You know what I mean? And we never spoke on this. I don't know why today I'm gonna say this, but they was coming to tell us that the team was moving. First, there was this one guy, Mr. Schwest, that was gonna buy the team at one point, and then, you know, the NBA took over the team or whatnot. So when I left, it wasn't like I'm leaving New Orleans because I want to be out of here. Like, the team was saying that they were moving and going to do this and going in all these other different directions. So that's why me and D West was like, okay, it's time for us to move on. Like, that city, man, listen, you know and I know, like, I will never have another bond like I had with that city, right?
You got drafted right before Katrina,
I got drafted a month before Katrina, right? 2 months before Katrina. Like, the city of New Orleans will forever hold the deepest place in my heart, right? My first 2 years was in Oklahoma, so I'm grateful for that. But then we went back to New Orleans. Like, man, I got real family that live in that city.
Your foundation does work there too.
Yeah,
right?
My sister-in-law from New Orleans, Randy, Kev, the Greenups, like, them, that's my real family that's there, man. So I hoop, I try not to trip at all, whatnot, but like, when I play back in New Orleans and people start booing and doing all this, I be looking around like, are y'all serious? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But I be cool on the court because I get it or whatnot, but I used to have a party like after every game. Real talk. Like, after every game when I played in New Orleans, not some games, every game, I'd be up at 360.
360.
Yep, or Republic or whatnot. Like, that year, we went to the playoffs, 2008, was the same year the All-Star game was there. The Saints won the Super Bowl. I actually tore my meniscus. I was on crutches. I was out on Poydras after the Saints won the Super Bowl. The night they won the Super Bowl, I was out there with my family on crutches, out there celebrating with the city of New Orleans, man. So,
for anybody who does doubt your love for it, was that you were actually emotional leaving when it was finally time to leave. I read you even said, like, there were people that you didn't even get to say goodbye to that were family. And so I think people see athletes and they think that we control all the business, but we don't, which should be obvious by that situation, because at that time, the league was running the team and had to okay the trade.
Man, so, if you knew, boy, Ryan, I'm telling you, like, it's so much stuff that went down in that whole situation. I actually called David Stern one night. He was at dinner. He was at dinner with his wife, and I'm just out here talking today. But I called him, he was at dinner. So one of the biggest issues, this was right after the CBA had just finised, right? And so when the trade went through, what happened was a few of the owners was mad. They said, no, this trade can't go through because we just had this whole CBA talking about player movement. One of the biggest issues and why I was mad, and there was a tweet that I sent out right after the trade got nixed, I said, wow, right? And a lot of people don't know the biggest frustration was because at this point, it was about money, right? So had my trade went through to the Lakers, I would have kept my bird rights, right? I would have kept my bird rights, which meant that if the trade happened, then I would have got a chance at some point when my contract was up to sign a longer deal, right? Because I was being traded. But when they told me on the phone, go to practice tomorrow and be ready to play out the rest of the season, right? So now that meant if I play the rest of the season and I leave as a free agent, I would get one less year.
Yep, so it's one less year guaranteed too.
Guaranteed. So at the time, it was like a $20 million difference.
Right.
So like I said, I never talked about that, but that was the big holdup. Yeah, it was playing with Kobe and going to the Lakers, but also it was about you just nixed the trade, which is gonna mess up my money.
Right.
Which is even more to this story about why I went to the Clippers and how I had to. It was crazy. Just know that it was.
My other question would be like, we're talking about the league, and I always mess with them about championships, but it's also different to represent your country. And you got to do that and be a part of the Redeem team. They know, and I talk about all the time, I'm the biggest Kobe fan ever. And that's why I was so mad about the trade, because I was like, we back. I was like, we just got us 2 out of 3. But, and so that was the excitement for me and the disappointment. But to be a part of that and to have that experience with Kobe Bryant, but also be the team that brought back some of the dominance we saw with the Dream Team, which is what I grew up with.
Yep.
Right. I thought it was going to be like that forever. I was like, oh, now that the pros are playing, this would be that sort of dominance. And that, Wayne, what was it like to be a part of bringing that back? And now looking back on it, knowing that Kobe Bryant has passed, what sort of memories and place does that hold for you?
It's a lot. In 2004, I was still in college, right? So I played on the USA team, under 18 team, when I was in college in 2004. It was like me, PJ Tucker, Sean May, right? It was a bunch of us that played in 2004, which that was the same year that the USA team lost in Greece, right? So 2006, this is after my rookie year. So now Coach K is the coach. I'm 1 year removed from college, all that Wake Duke energy, right? And we go, and if you watch that documentary, you see that we lose in 2006. That was tough, right? Because when we lost, we sitting in the locker room like, man, how we going home? How we going back home after we just lost? So then 2008, we just came in with a different energy. You know what I'm saying? When Kobe said he was playing, that was also cool. But it was a lot of different dynamics there, because it's a lot of different personalities that's all coming in. And I'll never forget one of the things Coach K said that was really big. And y'all know, playing sports this long, I take bits and pieces from all these coaches and stuff that you play with, teammates. He said, I don't need you to leave your ego at the door, right? Usually you always hear everybody say, man, everybody leave your ego at the door. He said, don't leave your ego at the door, because that's what makes each one of you great. Wow. He said, bring it in here and let's figure out how to make them all work together. Right? So you pushing a break, and I got Kobe on one wing, Melo on the other, Bron, you know what I'm saying, right. D-Wade. It was, that was memorable, because we felt like we really, like that year we practiced. Like practice was OD. It was crazy. Like 2012, we ain't practiced as much. We sort of knew, who we were, what we were gonna do. But 2008, like you talk about get it out the mud, like 2006 was like we had tryouts.
Yeah.
Can y'all imagine that? No, like real talk. Like we had tryouts in 2006. They brought like 30-something NBA players to Vegas and like throw the ball out on the floor, dive on the floor. Like we had real tryouts. You imagine getting to the NBA, the highest point of your life, right. And then you get cut.
Right, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Y'all probably done heard Gil talk about it before. Y'all ever heard Gil talk about it?
I've seen the Netflix Redeem Team special when they talk about how.
No, but you gotta talk to Gil, man. Gil is one of the funniest people you'll ever meet in like Gilbert Arenas, right? Before my rookie year, I lived in DC and worked out with Gil. Man, they cut Bruce Bowen, which was wild. They like waited till we got over to China, right? And then cut him.
Send him home?
Yes. Yes, they cut Bruce. This is 2006. They cut Bruce when we had got Wade, all over there. And I remember we was like, why they wait till we get over here to cut him? Man, when they cut Gil, right? Y'all should ask Gil about it. When they cut Gil from that team, because the other thing too is when you think about these teams, it's not just always the best players, right? It's got to be the best fit or whatever. And not saying Gil wouldn't have fit, but Gil was nice. I mean, one of the best guards I ever played against. When they cut him, Gil let all them know. He let all them know. He was like, listen, when I play y'all, I'm gonna give you 50, I'm gonna give you 60. And he said, if I could go back to college, Coach K, I'd give you 70. Guess what he did? When he played against Portland, Nate McMillan, 50. When he played against D'Antoni, 50. You know what I'm saying? But it was some times that I don't think any of us ever forget.
And bro, you talk about that, like I was gonna ask you about like the continuity of a team. Because you hear all these teams, and they love each other and they best friends till they don't win the championship.
Right.
And now they wasn't that tight like that.
Listen,
Listen,
man. Boy, you said something with that one.
Yeah, that gets on my damn nerves. I know you don't have to be friends to have a successful team.
Yeah.
But what does it take to have those 15 guys really be, I guess, close enough or respectful enough to really win one?
Y'all been on teams and locker rooms and stuff. I think at the end of the day, you got to respect the other person, right? Just respect the other person's craft and what they bring to the table. I've been on some teams that we hang out, we kick it and all that stuff like that, but I've been on some teams where it wasn't like that, right? I'll tell you this, my favorite teammate my whole career is a guy named David West, right? Me and D West, our wives, my wife Jada and his wife Leslie was tight, like always together talking. Me and D West didn't hang out and go to dinner and stuff like that, right? I still talk to D West now, you know what I'm saying? But on the court, we were so locked, right? Because there was a respect factor there, and we led in different ways. I was more vocal. D West sort of just led with how he played, but it was a trust factor there. You don't have to be buddy-buddy with everybody, but there's a thing that you don't want to let the man next to you down, right? I think that's the teams that's the most successful. When you so invested, you invested for him, right? Like of course I want to win, dog, but I want to see you win. Yeah. And you can feel that. Y'all know what it's like when you got a team like that, when you look at your teammate and he probably come hit your helmet and be like, let's get it, let's go, you know? And so that's just my opinion.
People always ask me about locker room. We have a lot more players than you guys have. But like if Fred played offense, I would probably see Fred for like 15 minutes in the morning at the team meeting. We'd see each other in the locker room or at lunch, and then on the field, we would alternate. He'd be on the field when I wasn't, and we'd switch it. So you don't really hang with everybody like that. But I would always say, all my teammates ain't my friends, and all my friends ain't my teammates. You know, and that's just how it was. But then you see, like me and Troy, like some of my best friends in the world. You know what I'm saying? But we both played safety, sort of like you said, we totally different humans. You know what I mean? But we were just so locked in that when he moved, I moved. Like we always knew what it was. For you, CP, being as great as you are, you've been in New Orleans, you've been in LA, you've been in Houston, you've been in OKC, you've been in Phoenix. And the one thing that I love about you going to OKC was that people kind of wrote it off like he's just there, right? And you competed, and the team competed. You know, I think it was in 2019, you started writing a saying on your shoe to let you know, like, you had to keep going. You actually do not seem like a nice person.
For real.
And hearing people talk about you, I've heard like a lot of good things, how intelligent you are, how tough you are, this. No, I've never heard anybody say, you know what? I just love being around him. You know what I mean? But everywhere you go, those teams compete, those teams play smart, they play hard, and they win. How have you been able to adjust to different scenery, different locker rooms, different styles, and make it your own and have those teams play so well?
It's hard, you know what I mean? Like for real, probably to play with me, you know, to be my teammate or something like that, because a lot of times I got a one-track mind, you know what I'm saying? And that's to compete. And if you're not on that same energy, then it's gonna be hard. It's gonna be hard for us to get along. It's hard. That's why me and Book get along, probably, because he on that same energy. One thing you learn in this league is that a lot of guys start to appreciate you after the fact. After the fact, right? A lot of guys will be like, man, see, it was hard, and then I leave or something, and then ain't nobody hard on them or whatever, and then it sort of just fall apart. You know what I'm saying? You know how that old saying, they say when your coach getting on you, you should like it, because when he stopped,
he don't care no more.
He don't care no more.
Yep.
Like when I went to OKC, it was dope, because I've never been the one that when everybody goes right, I usually go left. To each his own, whatever guys want to do when they say they don't want, like they get traded to a certain place and they say they ain't gonna show up, right? I don't even know what that means. When I got traded to OKC, I was in Atlanta at the Peach Jam with my AAU team.
But they already told you, though, they weren't trading you, right?
Yeah. Daryl Morey.
That's always great.
My man Daryl Morey had called me like a week before while I was in Vegas. He was like, you don't want to get traded to OKC, right? I was like, nah, not at this point, in my career. He was like, okay, cool, I won't do that because you chose to come to us. Fast forward a week later, I was on the phone with my wife, and then it said Daryl was calling, and then it popped up on Bleacher Report that I had been traded to OKC, and talked to Daryl for literally 2 seconds, and hung up. Didn't see him again until the bubble. You know what I mean? But it is what it is, and it shows you in this league and professional sports, don't nobody owe you nothing, right? And I'll tell you this, OKC was unbelievable. I might not still be playing if not for that year I had there, because I found that joy back. When somebody get traded, what's usually the first thing that happens? Like the coach or something they call you, right? So when I got traded to OKC, nobody called me. Nobody called me. So the coach didn't call me for OKC. The GM, Sam Presti, who's a great guy, nobody called me. And so like another day went by and they ain't called me. And I asked my agent at the time, I was like, why ain't nobody called me, right? And they were saying because they think you're gonna get moved somewhere else. So I called him. I called Sam Presti. And I was like, hey, Sam, this is Chris. I was like, can you send me some of the guys on the team phone number? You know what I mean? Because I don't know about getting moved or whatever, but right now, I play for the Thunder. Yeah. So I need to reach out to these guys. And that's what happens, man, in the world of social media and all these alerts, right? So then everybody started saying, what? Chris don't want to be there. He didn't want to do that. So our very first team meeting, what'd I do? I stood up in front of my whole team. I said, if y'all want to know something about me, ask me. I was like, I'm not asking to be traded. I'm here, right? But that's not the way everybody operates. People let the media say this or say that in the locker room, and so a lot of people can't handle that, right? So if it's an issue going on, if it's a problem, I'm gonna address it, right? And that's who I am, you know what I mean? And so when people can't handle that or don't like it, then it is what it is. But I've always stood on the fact that I know who I am. And I do right by my teammates, whoever that is, any of them, if they can't be around, it is what it is. But I know at the end of the day that I can stand on that.
That personality trait that like you say, they call it killer mentality, they call it Mamba mentality, all that stuff. And like you say, you know how it's supposed to be. You think your personality turned off teams or people in the past? Because like Ryan said it nicely. I'll clean it up and say butt wipe. You don't seem like one sitting down with you. The kids hit butt.
Man, my kids that heard everything. You can say whatever you want to say. Okay, my kids that heard everything.
I think if you ask a number of people, they'll call you an asshole.
For sure.
Has that negatively affected your career or life in any way?
How so, though? You know what I mean?
Just with the trades and things. You're going from team to team to team is, rubbing people the wrong way. Somebody embraces you because you're on the court talent. They don't really know you, bro. Then you're in the facility. Then you're being Chris Paul, and that turns them off.
I totally get what you're saying. So the trades, right, going from New Orleans to LA, right? That wasn't like no team issue. Going from LA to Houston, that wasn't like they trade me. That's a whole nother situation of how it was like presented. So that was the only time I got traded, right, not knowing, was from Houston to OKC. You know what I'm saying? Like OKC to Phoenix was worked out with them. They was helping me get somewhere that was closer to home. Rubbing guys the wrong way or whatnot, like I said, if that happens or has happened or whatnot, what you learn too in playing in this league a long time is a lot of guys out here will be private friends, but public talking crazy, right? I'm telling you, and I know this for a fact. A lot of these guys who go out here saying this, saying that, they also hitting you on the other end saying, yo, can you help me do this? I'll be a great vet on your team. You know what I mean? So, even after my trade went through to Houston, I had a conversation with Ballmer. You know what I mean? Like all this stuff is real. Like as men, as humans, you got to be able to have those conversations. And I also had a job too as the union president for 8 years, which that came with a lot of shit with it, right? With a lot of guys who didn't like the way this was done, didn't like the way that was done. It's some people who'll go out there and talk crazy on my name or something like that because of how things was handled. When you're in a leadership position, right, and this is real talk, and you guys have been in it too, sometimes you gotta do things and you can't worry about being liked, right? Because you gotta actually like make real decisions. Like sometimes, y'all know when they talk about like coaches, right? Or they got assistant coaches, right? And everybody who can say, oh, I would have did it like this, or I should have did this. You know what I mean? I've been in a situation where I've had to, with the executive committee, Andre Iguodala, man, that's one of my dogs right there. And even though we battled against each other for a long time, Golden State, when I was in Houston and LA, we done been in a lot of crazy conversations for the betterment of the players in the league that ain't always gone the way the guys particularly wanted to go. You know what I'm saying? Like that bubble, if y'all knew how many guys was calling saying, what the hell you doing? Why we going down there and playing? But you learn to live with it.
Correct. You speak about leadership, and as I'm sitting here listening to you, RC's asking, questions. He does do a ton of research. That's why, he just won an Emmy, and that's why he's great at what he does.
Nah, you for real, dog, because that's dope to know all that. Like I pay attention. I'm listening.
Right. And the beautiful thing about the pivot in this platform is, especially with our guests, they have an opportunity to say it in their words, and let people hear it directly from the horse's mouth. But I'm listening to you, and I love how you carry yourself and how you're attentive, you move with a sense of urgency, how you like to communicate, and you get on the phone and call like a man should call.
Yeah.
And with that, do you see yourself getting into coaching or GM? Because that's what you sound like. Sound like you're going to coach. Yeah, some ownership, coaching, GMs, any of that stuff in the near future or after you're done?
Man, definitely love to be in ownership. One of my old teammates called me this morning to ask me questions about how they can be better in the playoffs going forward. You know what I mean? Like real talk. Like I played long enough now that a lot of my former teammates is coaches and stuff. You know what I mean? We lost to Dallas in the second round. Doug was my teammate when I played for the Clippers. He called me during their first round asking me how they could beat a team that they was about to play. Then fuck around, played us in the second round, beat us. You know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
So like, I love this game, man. And one thing I can say, and I say it here, and don't nobody know this game better than me. That's real.
Yep.
That's real. Like the ins and outs and nuances of this game. I wake up in the morning, my kids know I'm watching tape, I'm watching film, I'm thinking strategy. You might be better at something than me, but you're not gonna know this game better than me. Cause I'm invested. I love it from every aspect of it too, right? The grassroots level, right? AAU, I got
You got the AAU team.
Yeah, I got my AAU team. I got 12 kids that play in the NBA that came through my AAU program. I do an elite camp, right, every summer for years and years. The very first year I had camp, Steph Curry was a camper, and so was Eric Bledsoe. And it's fun for me because I get a chance to see them guys grow. Yeah, I compete against them all day long, you know what I mean? But I know them from when they're young, right? So like, De'Aaron Fox had came to camp, Dennis Smith, all these guys, man, I get a chance to play with these guys when they're younger. But coaching, I don't want to travel like that.
Right.
Straight up, like, because I've been gone so long from my kids, but I coach my AAU team. I be with them. That's fun because they actually listen.
Yeah,
Us
right.
NBA guys don't listen too good, but I gotta stay around the game.
We didn't get into a lot of your business endeavors, but I see that you do a lot. You were the first African-American in North Carolina to own a Chevron.
Yeah, my grandfather was.
Oh, your grandfather
Yeah,
was?
my grandfather
Okay.
had the first black-owned service station in North Carolina. So since I was a kid,
He just hustled people.
That's
at
why he had that
the
wide.
pumps.
that's what my granddad.
Like,
yeah,
that's thick.
But he owned it.
Right.
And so what's crazy is the phone number to my granddad's service station was 723-2232, right? And when you answered the phone, you said Jones Chevron. That's what you said. You said Jones Chevron. So it's crazy when we think about ownership these days. We think about other people doing the work. But back then, owning it meant you did the work.
Right.
Right? On my way to school this morning with my kids, I made my son get out and pump the gas, right? And I just thought about childhood, just having to check the oil, rotating tires and all that. That was my childhood.
First off, thank you to General Admission, Studio City. They closed down for you. We needed a spot. We was like, hey, Chris Paul will come in. They was like, okay, we cool. You know, you mentioned leadership, and it's difficult to talk about leadership and where we are now as a black man, as we've spoken about, without some of the social justice things you've been a part of. And we could take it back, you know, you mentioned the bubble, how integral you were in getting that all set up, but also there was a work stoppage for a few days after the Jacob Blake incident. You know, on this show, we joke about it, but people cry a lot, right? Right now, Freddie's the softest because he cried last. Like, that's the way it works. You cry last, you're the softest person on the show until somebody else cries, you know? And so you had tears in your eyes when you talked about the way y'all came together, the things you guys had to deal with, but also how difficult it was. Being a man in a leadership position in the NBA, but most of all, a leadership position in your home. Why have you always been willing to not only put your thoughts out, but your face in front of those things and stand up for people who lack the voice that you have?
Everybody has their strong suits, right? Everybody not always able to articulate their thoughts. And over time, I've been able to do that and to be able to like speak freely from my heart or whatnot on how I feel in a situation. So with our executive committee that we had at the union, it's different guys who can do their part. But with this certain thing, I was so invested in that bubble and putting all the different details in it that when the situation happened with Jacob Blake, it's so much that went down the night before, and me and Andre Iguodala meeting with two teams who was talking about not playing to when it happened, everybody else looking like, who gonna do something, right? Just like with your family, right? If you at your house with your family and somebody break in, right?
Daddy.
What you gonna do? What you gonna do? And so I was on the bus, headed to our game against the Rockets, and Shea, Gilders Alexander, who like my brother, I talk to him about it every day. Shea turned around on the bus and he said, you see what the Bucks did? And I was like, no, what happened? He was like, they not playing. So I immediately look at my phone and then boom, my phone started ringing. It's Damian Lillard calling. Then it's LeBron calling. Then Adam Silver called me, right? Like back to back to back. Because everybody, you know, somebody got to do something. You can't just answer and be like, oh, nothing. You know what I'm saying? I had to call this lady, last name Flateau, who had set up the whole bubble, and I asked her to put a whole bunch of chairs in a conference room, right? Because now COVID's still going on and they don't want to let us get together. And I said, to hell with that, we need to get together and talk. It was a conversation with Adam to let him know that we weren't gonna play the games that night. And so now we got a chance to get everybody in a conference room, right? And have some real conversations. And who else was gonna do it, right? And I was actually a little bit nervous, just a little bit, right, going into this, because I went in the middle of the room in front of all these players, many of who don't like me, right? Right? Well, I don't give a damn. You know what I mean? Because at the same time, it's a position of service.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, we got a nice CBA deal. We got all this different type stuff going on, and I could care less what they talking about, right? A job's got to be done. And so I got calls from the coaches. The coaches said they want to come into the meeting. So now I got to what? What I got to decide?
Whether or not the coach could come.
Exactly. Thought about it. I talked to Doc, and I talked to, I can't think of the other coach I talked to, and I was like, yeah. They was like, we're part of y'all family too. We want to be in there. Coaches come in. I get a call. Guess who else said they wanted to come in? The referees, right? And I get it. Like, everybody wants to be a part of it, but everybody gonna be like, oh, he ain't want to rep. Well, I said no to that because I wanted players to be able to talk freely, right? And so we get into that meeting. We start the meeting. Guys start talking. Tell you the truth, a couple coaches said some real stuff, man. John Lucas, he was passionate, man. He talked. Y'all know Luke?
Yep.
Luke, man, is a real OG. He talked in there and was passionate about it. He seen the league from years ago to what it is now. He said some real stuff. So did Armand Hill, Money. He said some real stuff. Doc said some real stuff. Then you got some players in the back right after that that said, man, get the coaches out of here.
Yeah.
Right? They said, get the coaches out of here. Even though the coaches had told us some real stuff.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it was a lot going on in there, man. But then we talked as players and all this stuff. And it was a lot for guys to handle, deal with. We broke after that day, came back the next day, and we made a decision. But it goes back to who gonna do it? Who gonna do it? Somebody got to do it, and everybody ain't gonna like it, but it is what it is.
I was on an executive committee for years. My team, the Pittsburgh Steelers, were the only team to vote no on the CBA. So imagine being the rep of the team that says no.
Right.
And you've been a rep on the team, you've been on the executive board, you've been the president, like you got to ride with your folks. And when we left that room, we left it that way, and there was no bending on it. And we understood that the CBA was going to pass, but that's what leadership is, and you've done that your entire career. Our last question that we like to give our guests the floor is to ask them, the name of the show is The Pivot, is what has been their biggest pivot in life? What has been that moment that helped shape Chris Paul? What is that moment that changed your life, whether good or bad, that you'll never forget? And being that you're an author now, and your book 61 comes out on June 20th. We know some of the events that have gone on in your life, but the floor is yours just to say and talk about something that helped make you.
Dang, that's a deep question.
It gets to everybody.
Yeah, it's tough because, I mean, I've been there for the birth of both my kids. My wife is unreal. She the strongest. She everything in our family. I'm thinking about like the death of my grandfather, you know, and how that just seems prevalent. Because even now, 20 years later, I just work, right? Just do the work. My wife out of town with some of our homegirls, my kids. We left the house this morning like 7:30 to take them to school. But I was up in the gym at 5:15, you know what I mean? Like working out. And I just think about doing the work. I don't know. And some people may say why or whatnot, but I just think about, like, even when I was growing up and it might be a party or something like that going on, and some people go and they say, why you ain't going? I always say, like, I want to enjoy things maybe later in life, right? Because doing the work, it's just always been about that. And so, I don't know. Probably as I get older, the word gratitude just means more and more to me. Just appreciate my family. And then I'll tell you this is crazy that you said that, is that I've always been a people pleaser, right? Always, just always like a people pleaser. And that's like, I've always had a hard time saying no, right? To this or that, you know, show up here, all right, I got you, this, that, and the other. But the biggest thing I've been trying to work on is showing up for the people who show up for me, right? Like, I let people do me dirty for so long, talk crazy about me, still show up for them, still do that. But it's just recently, I had a conversation with my wife. It's like, I'm done with that. And so probably just the pivot is investing more time in those who deserve it.
And I gotta ask, man, because you talk about leadership, decision making, bro. You lead so many people in so many great ways. I call people ecosystems. Like, we have so much around you, it's almost like you a damn sun and planets are going around you. And you're like seeing that and hearing you talk and doing research. But one decision you made that just blew my mind was when you, Dwayne Wade, and LeBron James
on that banana boat
climbed y'all's big black asses on a tube and let a boat drag you around the damn ocean.
Listen, man, first and foremost, Melo wasn't on it.
No,
Melo wasn't on the boat. Yeah, Gab was on it. You know what? That was, I mean, you knew paparazzi existed, but in the Bahamas, like, we was like 6 hours out on a boat in the Bahamas on vacation, right? And Melo, if Melo would have been on time, Melo showed up late to the boat. That's why he wasn't on that banana boat. He was late getting to the boat, man, but that's crazy what that turned into.
Yeah, no. I knew what it turned into in this bullshit. But Wade climbed up and your ass climbed right behind him. And Bron climbed behind your ass.
No, listen here, that is not how I go. We're right here. You know, him and his homie done rode a horse together. He already knows.
You saw the picture?
But man, bro, we appreciate you. This was something we were looking forward to. I'm gonna text CJ, tell him thank you.
Man, I appreciate y'all for real.
Working to do it, man.
Thank you.
It's been, it's dope. We all love basketball. Can't none of us play. You know what I'm saying? But to get an opportunity to talk to you where the man is greater than the player and the player is a first ballot Hall of Famer, that's what our show is about.
Man, what they all say, we all fall short. I ain't perfect by no means, man. Y'all know, like, always a work in progress, man. But I appreciate coming to talk and learn and hear from you guys too, man, because I ain't gonna keep talking. I know we gotta end, but one of the biggest things I learned is I got my homies that I grew up with, right? Sure y'all do too. I got a group chat called the Fellas Group Chat. All my homies that I grew up with, I'm actually taking them on a trip next week, right? Ain't nothing like that. But my brother, who I love to death, there's certain things that I've been through in life that he'll just never understand. That only y'all can understand, which is why when you guys give players and stuff like that a voice to come talk, like some of my relationships, me, Bron, Melo, and D-Wade, why we were so close for so long is it's only certain things that we know about. Your closest friend don't know what it's like getting to that hotel at a certain time at night and having all these people right here. So I appreciate y'all for having this platform.
Man, thank you, brother.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate you, my boy.
No doubt.
Hey, I was talking to Tanner before. I told him when I met you.
Yeah.
I told him when I met you in New Orleans, I was like, man, shoot, Chris is a little bit taller than me. I was like, I could probably play in the league. I was like, if I had great court vision and I had excellent handles and I could really shoot. And he's like, so if you can play basketball? I was like,
Play basketball. He can play basketball.
You gotta do all of that.
Hold up, limitless, take a stomach, got pinning it. I fought the head to witness it. Get my people feeling militant. Way I'm feeling, get me up. On the mission, get me up. Knowing me, I got the key. Only vision I can trust. Limitless, take a stomach, got pinning it. I fought the head to witness it. Get my people feeling militant. Way I'm feeling, get me up.